Have you recently become interested in the miniature painting hobby? Well, in this video I'm going to show you how to get your first miniature painted and ready for the tabletop.
Rebel Rogue.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rebel Rogue. If you are new to the channel, please do hit that subscribe button and ding the notifications bell. So miniature painting is a hobby that has grown hugely in popularity in recent years. So today I'll be showing you how to go from not owning a single miniature to having a painted miniature ready for play. This video is perfect for beginners, so if you're already a veteran painter, perhaps consider sharing this video with a beginner friend. There are many ways to get into miniature painting, be that RPGs such as Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, to skirmish games such as Warhammer Underworlds, or even army games such as Flames of War and Black Powder. But for many people, the prospect of painting one miniature, let alone 10 or 100, is a daunting prospect. Today I will be taking you through, step by step, how to assemble, prime and paint your very first miniature. I will presume at this point that you have picked up a box or package of your preferred miniatures. Today I will be working with an Athenian armoured hoplite from Victrix Games, but this process is applicable to any miniature. I would recommend that you start with a 25mm to 35mm scale model, as smaller models can be more difficult and larger models require more time to make them look really good. So the first step of the process is to assemble the model. It is vital at this point that you follow the instructions presented in the kit, though some kits are easier than others. For this step you will need some cutters, a scalpel or other hobby knife and some glue. You may wish to use nail files or needle files to smooth some edges, and clippers aren't really necessary, but I like to use them anyway. I will leave links below to some of these supplies. To begin, locate the first part, take your clippers and, with the flat side facing the first part, cut away the sprue tabs. Repeat this with each of the tabs on the part, and then proceed to the next part until all of your parts have been removed from the sprue. Take care not to cut off any important parts of the model, such as spear tips, plumes, arms, legs, etc., as it will be a pain to glue these back on later. Now it's time to clean up the parts. With my scalpel, I trim off any tabs that are left on the removed parts, again taking care not to cut into the parts themselves, but still removing as much of the tab as possible. Then, I carefully drag my knife down the mould lines on the parts. Mould lines are simply where moulds have been pressed together and some of the plastic has seeped out. These will be worse on some models than on others. When doing this, make sure to keep good control of your hobby knife and hold the blade roughly perpendicular to the mould line. You can then continue this process of removing tabs and mould lines on the rest of the parts. I did try out the Citadel mould line remover that comes in the starter paint set, but I would not recommend it. It's hard to use without a handle, and a knife does the job anyway. Once all of the parts are fully cleaned up, it is time to glue them together. For this, I like to use Citadel plastic cement, but Humble poly cement and Tamiya extra thin are good alternatives. The main problem with this glue is the nozzle becoming blocked. To unblock this, I use a piece of guitar string, a G or B string I think, and gently push it into the nozzle. You may struggle to get the paint to come out of the nozzle, but pushing it in and out usually makes it work. I then apply a small amount of this glue to the point at which the two parts will join before gently pushing one onto the other. I would recommend testing the fit before gluing them together. I would also recommend putting glue on the join of only one of the parts, as gluing both sides of a join can make it difficult to hold the parts in place. I then continue to glue each of the remaining parts in place. I chose to leave the shield off for this part as I felt that it would get in the way whilst painting, and I might recommend that you do the same You don't want to make your first model too difficult to paint. I like to prime my models before painting, as I find paint sticks to them better and it just generally improves the experience, therefore I'd recommend that you do the same. For this I use Badger Stynylrez black primer through my airbrush, but I would recommend that you use a spray can or an aerosol primer if you don't have an airbrush. You can use a brush-on primer, but I find that these aren't as reliable. I try to get a smooth, even coat of primer across the model so that no bare grey plastic is showing. If one coat isn't enough, do another, but remember not to apply coats too thickly as this can obscure detail. One primer that I have found to be recommended is Halford's grey or black primer, which is available from Halford's in the UK. The US, various other spray paints are available. Now that the model is assembled and primed, we can begin a process known as base coating. This is where we block in the individual colours that we want to be on the model. You can do some very advanced things with base coats, but for the moment we'll be using one colour per area. One colour on the tunic, one for the armour, one for the helmet, etc. I started by painting the tunic blue. I'm mostly using Vallejo paints in this video, therefore I only apply one coat as they cover quite well, but if the paint you are applying is quite transparent, then multiple coats may be needed. Always remember though, 2 thin coats are better than 1 thick coat, and do make sure to shake your paints properly. Or stir them. Stick around until the end, where I will show you some tips on how to make this look slightly better. I'll put a list of colours that I use in the video description below for you to check out, and whilst you're down there, perhaps consider subscribing and giving this video a like. This model has a trim around the armour that I want to be silver, therefore, using a medium or small brush, specifically synthetic, I paint all of the armour in this colour. I will come back later and paint over the central panels with black, as this is the colour that I want the armour to be. You could paint the trim after the armour, but I find that blocking panels in is easier. I also paint the skin much darker than I want it to end up, as in the next step I'll paint raised areas a lighter colour, leaving this dark colour in the recesses to provide some visual contrast. Continue to base coat different areas of the model until you're somewhat happy with the result. Before continuing to the next step, I touched up or painted over any areas where unwanted paint had ended up on a certain area, for example, brown from the straps ending up on the black armour. Whilst not an essential step, I would highly recommend that you do this to create pretty nice looking models. The final step in painting your first miniature is to apply some simple highlights. Highlights are simply areas of lighter colour that we apply to simulate light falling on a model. The simplest way to do this is to highlight all of the raised edges and folds whilst leaving the recesses a darker colour. On the skin, this is simply a matter of applying a lighter colour to the raised muscles. This is a great way to practice this simple highlighting technique, as many GW models have over-exaggerated muscles, either actual or on their armour, or facial features. On the tunic, I paint the tops of the folds with my lighter colour, leaving the recesses the original colour. Again, fabrics such as this are also a good way to practice this, as many GW models and non-GW models have prominent folds in their cloth. Highlighting also provides contrast, which makes your model stand out on the tabletop and be easily identified from 6 feet away. With highlights complete, your first miniature is almost finished. However, there are some things you can do to make it slightly more interesting. Number 1, you can highlight all of the surfaces instead of 1 or 2 as shown here. Number 2, you can apply a wash to your miniature. I have a video in my basics playlist which will be linked at the end of this video. And finally, you can create a simple base for your miniature, which I will be doing a video in the future on that. So, I hope you have enjoyed this video and it has sparked a love of painting in you. I will link my playlist of basic techniques for you to check out and improve your painting, so go and check it out. I will also link a video I made about some decent cheap brushes if that is your cup of tea. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.